Welcome to DevTech 101, aka Black Mantle, as I discuss information technology, also known as IT. And in today's video, I have a very interesting topic, and we're going to be talking about town halls happen after the deal is done. And what this is basically talking about in this episode is looking at how when we see these town hall meetings, they are more reactionary, meaning that the data center business has already went down and the town hall and the people that are in the community are just now reacting to it. And so I've been watching a couple of videos of these popping up as they've been showing up, of course, on social media. And what I've been reading and what I've been seeing about it is a lot of the town hall meetings that happen today lately that have been circling around the data centers, people are frustrated after the fact because they are just now finding out the information after the deal has already been done. And so what happens? People feel ignored. They feel like the decisions has already been made, which most of the time they have been. And honestly, that feeling isn't wrong at all because people should be feeling some type of way when these particular data centers come into the communities. Now, of course, with this being a tech channel, I'm always talking and looking about it from a futuristic perspective and keeping my mind open as I begin to see these because the more and more that we get ingrained in technology, artificial intelligence, the more data centers that we're going to have that are going to start to populate up and show up and around. And so the part that rarely gets explained is the town halls don't start data center projects at all. What you see is more than 100% of the time when you see the people going off online, it's because the deal has already been done and hands have already been shaked behind the scenes. And the people are upset within the community because of the impact environmentally, how the data centers are in the areas and the cities that these are coming up into. Now, thinking about it from a tech perspective, it's only going to become much more worse for people because these data centers are going to be popping up more and more around the world as more land is being bought or leased out to these big Fortune 500 companies to build these data centers. There's going to be more projects. And guess what? It usually happens after most of the important decisions are already in motion, they already are being made. And so when you look at overall on the real timeline, which I'm going to get into here in a second, it's going to begin to make sense to you. When you look at as far as the number of data centers that are being built in the United States and around the world globally, we're going to focus on the US first. And the United States has over 5,400 data centers that are at least around somewhere in the United States. And a lot of times these have been out in the boondocks. People have may not necessarily known what they were, but the fact that they are becoming such massive structures, people are able to see them now in their own backyard. And that is what people is getting upset about because of the noise, the environmental impact, the amount of water that's being used and all of that. And so when you look at around the whole world, you have about 11,800 data centers that have popped up around the world. And this has been an ongoing process from new buildings being built to pre-existing buildings. But the United States has the majority of those data centers, which is around 5,400 of those that are basically there. When you look at other countries, around the world, and it goes down the list from the United States, it goes to Germany, the UK, China, France. Most of these countries have data centers that are beginning to pop up. And when you look at the global data center market, it is projected as of 2025 to exceed about $527.46 billion in 2025, and that revenue is continuously growing, and it's going to be even more by 2030 by the time that gets here. Now, when we look at the timeline of this, what a real timeline looks like, what a lot of people don't talk about, and I discussed in a previous video, you have to understand the fact that people do own real estate and they do own land. So you have private landowners. If the private landowners sell and or lease their land out to a big Fortune 500 company, then what you would see is when that sale happens, the company start the early zoning conversation. So if it's in the county, it may then become in the city, the paperwork and all this stuff is done behind the scenes. Then the incentive discussions begin to start circulating, and they happen a lot of times behind closed doors before the general public is even aware of the information. And how can you find that out? Well, maybe if you are into your city politics, maybe looking into your city council, you may be able to find out things just doing your research or just driving around and just seeing even plots of land being platted out. You may see some things going on there, especially in big farm like areas. And they see a lot of this in the Mid South. Look at some of the videos I did about Memphis and West Memphis and stuff like that. They're getting them all across Arkansas, of course. They're getting it in other surrounding states. And when you have these conversations behind closed doors, it's only after the fact that the town hall shows up. And I'm telling you, these people show out. If you look at some of the videos that have been posted online, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about, because this is all beginning to make sense. And by that point, the leverage is mostly already gone. And so when we look at this, 35% of the market is held by hyperscale data centers, whether they're going into pre-existing buildings or building new buildings. And those are, of course, your big tech companies like Amazon, Google, Meta, Apple. And these are just popping up around the world. And about 4% of the global energy consumption that is being taken and driven by the data centers, making them the most energy intensive components in this digital infrastructure market that we are in right now. And this is really a big deal to people that are in these communities, because what they're seeing is they're seeing these in their backyard. And so when the residents walk into the town hall meetings thinking that it's going to be some negotiation, they're going to be able to talk to the people that are running these data centers, that doesn't happen. And so they begin to get angry. And what they're really stepping into is a reaction session, because the work has already been done. And a lot of times it could be that the local leaders, is it's not because they don't necessarily care, but because the deals of regarding the structure and the infrastructure is already set. So the people are kind of coming in on a project that's already finished. And when you begin to see that in this light, you begin to see some different things that are happening and that's going on and around. And so this doesn't mean that the community shouldn't speak up, in which they should, especially if they are impacted regarding the different types of things that are happening within those communities that they live in. And when you look at this overall, for example, when you look at a data center that could say can possibly run about 1.5 gigawatts of electricity into computing for the artificial intelligence that you use, like Chat GPT or your Canvas and all these different platforms that are out here that use AI, the more intensive that is, the more data centers that have to be built. And when you have that, when you're looking at that 1.5 gigawatts of electricity, that is equivalent. That is equivalent. Like a single gigawatt itself is enough to power up to about 750,000 homes in the United States at any given time. So imagine if some of these facilities are in like the 2.5 gigawatt, they produce 2.5 gigawatts of electricity or even more than that. And so the people see this in their communities and they're very, very upset about it. And if the land is already sold, the conversation shifts from whether a data center should exist to how it will exist in the community, because now the people have to adapt to the different environmental impacts that have happened around them. And that is what we're seeing online in the videos. That is what we're seeing in these town hall meetings. And it's only a matter of time, people, because before it's in your backyard. And so being a person that's been in tech for a long time, I've always seen data centers a little bit more on a smaller scale, contained within buildings not really bothering necessarily the environment around them, but just to see them expand out to be able to not only support that particular business, since a lot of things are moving to the cloud, more businesses are taking the infrastructure from within the company and they're putting this into the cloud like Microsoft Azure. They're using the GCP. They may be using Vultr. They may be using DigitalOcean. They also could be using AWS. The more and more that these big companies move to the cloud, they're going to need this infrastructure that is around. So the data centers have to be around in these different communities. And then when you look at the communities that they are in, for example, a lot of the Google one that I talked about this in Memphis, you also have to understand too, yes, they were creating jobs, but is it creating jobs for the people that live in West Memphis? Likely not. Likely it's going to be jobs going to be created for people who may have to relocate to this area in order to get it up and running. And even in IT, as I always said on the channel, there is a skill set that you have to have in order to work in this industry. That is a must. There's no way of getting around that. And so when we look at this, the what the community should learn is definitely the skill set if they want to work in this particular industry. They're going to be forced to move, could be displaced and having to move into a different area because something so large is right in their backyard. There was a video online of a lady who was out in a rural area. Of course, a data center popped up next door, and now they're getting upset because of the sound and the lights and all this stuff at night. It's just so bright. And so these are different things that will show up around people, and they're going to have to end up moving to another area because they are not able to withstand the things that are going on right now. And so the real lesson here is definitely in the timing. How would the communities be able to keep up with this? How will they be able to just know what is coming wrong and along and around in the communities that they are in? Because if the communities want the influence, it has to happen before the land deals are actually finalized. Because how else could the people protest it if they feel that they need to do so before these come in? And that is when the protection and the limits and the benefits can actually be negotiated is before the data centers actually take place in the communities. So I can understand how people who may live in these areas or may paid off their homes and live in these areas and these data centers pop up in their backyard. I can most definitely understand their feelings in that regard. But however, a lot of this is happening prior to the town hall meetings, and that's why you see people showing up and they are turning out and they are talking, they are getting angry, they're protesting it because they do not want them in their backyard. But on the flip side, in order for technology to continuously advance itself, especially with all this automation and robotics and all that stuff, these data centers are going to have to be built somewhere. They're less likely going to be built out in rural areas. They're going to be more closer into the inner city because they have to be able to tap into the electrical grid and the water and stuff like that because you have to think about it. A lot of times the water may have to be a little bit closer in order to cool all this equipment that is in place. And so overall, when you look at this, the town hall meetings are going to continuously be important. The people definitely going to have to be aware of what's going on, but that is not the starting line of the conversation of where these data centers are starting at. They are the checkpoint. They've already made it past a specific area. And when you understand that timeline, you have to understand that that timeline is going to change the entire conversation that people are having because the rest of the people aren't being told, of course, what's going on within these communities here. And so hopefully you all are able to definitely check that out. Look at some of the other videos online. I was going to play them on the channel specifically because I don't want to, play somebody else's content in that regard. But definitely check these out. This whole data center thing is a very, very interesting topic. I definitely think that you all will learn a lot if you were to tap into it and just learn a little bit more about it. Like I said, it's nothing new for me because I've seen this for so many years. It was only a matter of time before it started happening, but most definitely like, listen, subscribe to the channel. DevTech 101, aka Black Mantle. Look forward to bringing more content to you all soon. Stay sharp, stay secure, subscribe for more tech with purpose only on Div Tech 101.